Welcome to Stonetree Therapy. This recording is not a substitute for mental health treatment. If you need therapy or hypnotherapy, please contact a trained professional. Hi, my name's CJ Webster. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist at Stonetree Therapy. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about hypnosis and the research that's out there about it. Believe it or not, this first was about a 20-minute talk, and after just kind of rambling for 20 minutes, I realized that a lot of it was really interesting to people who are passionate about the research, but probably not as interesting to you. Essentially, we know that hypnosis is well validated in research, but that's not the general perception out there. In fact, I thought about talking about this primarily because I had someone come in and say, I don't believe in all that hypnosis stuff. I think it's just make-believe. But what we know is that there's a really good research base behind it. This isn't just something that's been passed down through generations and we kind of have it there. It's a really active area of research that people want to understand, and that they're finding that everything that we do backs up that this can be really helpful for a lot of people. Just as an example, if you go to PubMed, .gov, it's a government website that just lists a whole lot of research on different topics. So it's a really good idea. It gives you an idea of how much research has been done, as an example at least, on different areas. And so just the other day, January 2019, I typed in a couple of phrases and I typed in rational emotive behavior therapy. And it came back with 318 research projects that have been completed that test rational emotive behavior therapy. Now, if you're not a therapist, you may not have heard about that, but within the therapy world, that's a really well-known, validated treatment method. So 318, that's a good bit of research with that. But that's a particular approach. So I thought, okay, well, let's put in a general term. And so I put in mindfulness. Now, mindfulness is really common these days. It's being tested everywhere. It's kind of a revolution. You'll see it on the front of magazines and newspapers talking about it. You've probably seen websites talking about how they're putting it in the schools. So that's a really good broad topic. I thought there's going to be a lot of research on that, and there is. When I put mindfulness into that, I come back with 6,028 research projects. Now, we're not talking like websites where someone's just decided to do a little project on the side and write something up. This is actual scientific research that's been presented, in many cases peer-reviewed journals, really good evidence-based, and mindfulness comes up 6,028 times. So what about hypnosis? It's been around forever. It's fair enough to think that there may not be quite that amount of research on it. So I put in hypnosis and just kind of see what came up. And not putting in hypnotherapy or any of those other things, just simply hypnosis, it came back with 14,592 research articles on it. This idea isn't a new one. It's not something that someone has simply said, oh, we're not going to bother researching research. There's been a lot of work into it. And we've seen that through that research, it's a really valuable approach. In particular, the research suggests that for depression, for anxiety, for phobias, for OCD, for fibromyalgia, for anxiety, I said that already, pain, PTSD, that it's well validated that this is a good approach and can be very helpful for some people. A couple of standout examples, just to let you know how powerful it can be, is that irritable bowel syndrome. It depends where you look, but if, for instance, you look at the UW Health website, it lists hypnosis as one of the prime ways to treat irritable bowel syndrome. That's because some gastroenterologists will say that if you are not using hypnosis in treating irritable bowel syndrome, you're simply not providing the best standard of care, because it has been proven time and time again to be effective and useful in treating that condition. Here at Stonetree Therapy, we actually use the North Carolina protocol, which is the one that's been over and over researched. And so it's just helpful to know that if they've done this in a scientific setting and found that it's really useful, that we're using that same practice right here in Waunakee, Wisconsin. The other ones that stand out is warts. I've spoken to a pediatrician about a year and a half ago now, who was saying that number one treatment for her in treating sports is to utilize hypnosis, primarily because different freezing techniques, essentially the warts tend to come back a lot more. And in her practice and in the research that she's looked at, that the warts treated by hypnosis are more likely to go, and they're more likely to stay gone in that approach. So that's a standout example as well. And you've probably heard performance improvement sort of things. So in sports psychology, they'll use hypnosis a lot. I recently saw something saying there was a famous actor, George Clooney, who utilized it to get into a role and really get the feel of what was going on. But there's studies about how utilizing hypnosis in a sports situation improves the ability to stay focused, improves the ability to practice the tasks, even when you're not playing the game, to improve your performance in that area. So there is a lot of research out there. My long talk went through all the different studies and looked at it, but essentially it comes back that these leading scientists are saying there's no way that you can say with the evidence that we have that there's not a valid argument to accept the reality of hypnosis. They can prove it in brain scans. They show that very clearly in response to an induction, which is what we talk about, getting into that hypnosis zone or into that trance zone, depending on the wording you like, that changes when we start to use our prefrontal cortex in response. And that then, depending on the suggestions, different parts of our brains actively light up to process and use that information. So a brain study I was looking at just in September of 2018 was stating that even using the words comfort and safety in different ways as you utilized it, in the brain scans it actually lit up completely different parts of the brain, and which affected the nervous system in completely different ways. And so the way that you integrated that into the suggestions during that hypnotic zone or trance affected how the brain was processing that information, and in turn how the nervous system was responding to that. So we see this time and time again, and there's a lot of research from behaviors being changed to the way that we think about things, to simply being able to see on an fMRI scan that different parts are being affected. So for more information, you can obviously come in and ask. Currently we're having a sort of trial where if you would like to come in and have a 30-minute session totally free of charge, just to see if hypnosis is a really good match for what you want some treatment for, then we'll sit down and have a conversation with you and talk through if this is a good match for you, what sort of things you could expect to see, and whether that's been proven in research in the past. We know that this happens. Even if we go back to 2007, there was a groundbreaking book that kind of got everyone astir with different ideas. The book was called The Brain That Changes Itself. And in it, the neuroscientist Norman Deutsch, which I probably just completely said that incorrectly, so I apologize, was talking about neurogenesis and neuroplasticity. And for the longest time, it was felt that the brain didn't change past a certain age, that we grew up and then we had what we had, and that's all there was to it. And this 2007 book was groundbreaking in sharing that our brain does continue to grow and create new connections. And this neuroscientist being quoted was put this way: the use of experiential processes such as hypnosis appears to encourage neurogenesis and neuroplasticity. Hypnosis seemed, among other things, to be a technique that might allow a person caught in a brain trap or one kind of another to get out of their rut and not dig themselves in deeper trying. So again, we have a lot of research. There's a lot of information out there, and we're very strong here at Stonetree Therapy on using research-based approaches. If you want to look a little bit more into it, 2 books for practitioners out there, or clinicians, that I would really recommend. A Trance Work by Dr. Michael Yapko, and Hypnosis for Behavioral Health by Dr. David Reed, which I gathered some of the original research for and pulled on there, but you can look at it. Here at Stonetree Therapy, I am a member of both the American Society of Clinical Hypnosis and the Society for Clinical and Experimental Hypnosis. So we get the journals, we get the latest research, and we put those in practice. So I hope this has been interesting and informative for you. Definitely give us a call if you're interested, or check out our website at www.stonetreetherapy.com. Hoping to hear from you soon.